I still remember the day Richter Belmont was announced for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It was such a delightful surprise for me as my Castlevania experience had begun with Symphony of the Night. I simply never expected him to make it into the roster alongside Simon. But what probably shocked me most was how many people simply didn't know who Richter was. He's part of one of the most famous moments in any game, let alone Castlevania, but it didn't matter. He was somehow an unknown. But with the coming release of Castlevania Nocturne on Netflix, Richter is about to be thrust into the spotlight once again. And much like the first 4 seasons of Castlevania, the trailer revealed that this is a very different take on the vampire hunter, though there are surely some elements that carry over. This got me thinking, how many people are going to accept this version of Richter as the one they'll always think of, much like what happened to Trevor and Sypha? It's not entirely a bad thing, but there are so many people who probably don't realize how important Richter is to the entire history of Castlevania. So join me as I recount the life of the last Belmont vampire hunter for over 200 years. Richter Belmont is the descendant of Juste Belmont, grandson of Simon Belmont and protagonist of Harmony of Dissonance. Little is known of his early life, only that, like the other Belmonts, he received training to wield the whip Vampire Killer in order to prepare for the next coming of Dracula. In the meantime, he somehow found his way to the village of Aujba, where he met his eventual girlfriend Annette. But in the year 1792, it finally happened. Dracula returned thanks to a dark priest named Shaft, who sacrificed a virgin to commiserate the ritual and bring back the Lord of Castlevania. Upon his resurrection, Dracula sends his forces to attack Aujba and kidnap 3 young women, the young nun Tara, the doctor-in-training Iris, and Annette. However, upon seeing this, a 12-year-old girl named Maria Renard attempts to save the other women, as she's from an offshoot of the Belmont family and already proficient at summoning mystical animals. She fails in her rescue and is taken along with the other women to Dracula's castle. Richter was away from the village at this time, but soon hears of its plight and rushes to save it. It's not an easy trick though, as Dracula's confidant, Death, decides to test his mettle and battles him on the wagon. Richter is able to fend for himself, but Death promises their rematch won't be so easy. From there, Richter defeats all the remaining monsters in Aujba before heading to Castlevania. He rescues each of the young women, with Maria joining him in the fight while Tara and Iris flee home. Annette is showcased a little more as she threatens to kill herself before Dracula can drink her blood. Dracula is amused by this and attempts to sway her to his side, but nothing really comes of it. But the remake of Rondo of Blood, Dracula X Chronicles, actually follows up on this idea if Richter fails to save her. She'll become a lesser vampire and serves as a boss fight before the final confrontation with Dracula. Of course though, the scenario is non-canon. Instead, Richter is able to make his way through Castlevania, defeating Death, Shaft, and eventually Dracula. It's the final fight against Dracula that's highlighted and redone in Symphony of the Night as the opening scene. While the scene is pivotal in showing Richter as a hero to those unfamiliar with Rondo of Blood, especially as it was never localized before Symphony's release, it's not actually all that important when it comes to the story of Richter. No, the one that would lead to the Belmont's downfall is Shaft. Though Shaft was defeated by Richter during the events of Rondo of Blood, twice in fact, as the Dark Priest immediately came back as a ghost to try and serve Dracula, it still wasn't the end of him. After his ghost was defeated, it hid itself away in a crystal ball, recovering his strength until he could take revenge on Richter. That finally came 4 years later as the invisible ball began to pervade Richter's thoughts. This culminated not only in the return of Dracula's castle, but an early resurrection of Dracula himself. Shaft was confident that with Richter standing as the lord of the castle, no other vampire hunter could dare challenge them, as he was the mightiest in the land. What he did not count on was the reawakening of Dracula's son, Alucard, after over 300 years. Sensing the absence of a Belmont that could challenge his father, Alucard made his way to the castle to investigate what had happened. And thanks to the help of Maria Renard, Alucard learned of Shaft's ambitions and corruption of Richter. He destroyed the crystal ball, banishing Shaft forever, before confronting his father and defeating him once more. But Richter was scarred from the experience, vowing to never again pick up the whip. This was challenged a year later during the events of a radio drama titled Nocturne of Recollection. In it, new vampire attacks threaten the countryside, drawing the attention of the retired Richter. Eventually, he discovers that a vampire named Magnus was trying to bring back Dracula's castle, with Alucard acting as its new lord. Thankfully, due to the faith of Maria and the intervention of Richter, Alucard did not walk down the same path Richter once did, and Magnus was defeated. Despite this small victory, Richter still didn't feel worthy to wield the vampire killer. And perhaps due to his corruption or some other kind of prophecy, the Belmont clan needed to disappear until the destined final battle with Dracula. Very little is known where this prophecy came from or if Richter's corruption by Shaft necessitated it, but Richter decided to give the holy weapon to an offshoot of the Belmont clan, the Morrises. It's at this point that Castlevania ties into the original Dracula novel, though with a few tweaks to make it their own. Quincy Morris, the Texan suitor of Lucy Westenra, who stabbed Dracula through the heart, is reimagined as the successor of the Morris clan and wielder of the vampire killer, which he used to kill Dracula, though he succumbed to his own injuries during that battle. He also wasn't a suitor to Lucy as he already had a son of his own, John. John's story would be told in Castlevania Bloodlines, where he uses the whip while teaming up with his friend Eric Lecard to stop Elizabeth Bartley in 1917 from resurrecting Dracula. The two succeeded, but they also discovered something else. Using the vampire killer came at a price. If it was not wielded by a true Belmont, then the whip would make up for the difference in power by consuming the user's life force. This led to John's early demise and his son Jonathan taking up the mantle in his place once a new threat began to take shape. Jonathan's story is told through the events of Portrait of Ruin, which takes place during World War II. In it, Jonathan and his friend Charlotte enter Dracula's castle to stop a new vampire named Bronner from using it for his own ends. They discover that Bronner has not only killed Eric Lecard, but brainwashed his twin daughters to do his bidding. Jonathan and Charlotte are able to save the girls thanks to the help of Eric, who used his abilities to bind his soul to the castle while resisting corruption. There, he tells of the vampire killer's toll, but says there is a way to get rid of it and unleash its full power. Jonathan agrees to undergo the ritual despite the danger, and finds himself face to face with the spirit of Richter. Only by defeating him can he use the true power of the vampire killer, and thankfully he succeeds, using the weapon to stop Bronner, death, and the return of Dracula once more. But what happens after this point is unknown. The Morris family is mentioned no more, and Dracula doesn't threaten the world again until 1999, the prophesied day when the Demon Castle War would take place. It is during these events that Julius Belmont once again wields the vampire killer and uses it to not only defeat Dracula, but seal his castle within an eclipse. Julius didn't do this alone, but beyond Alucard and an unnamed Shinto priest, it's impossible to say who all helped him put an end to the conflict. While much of this story doesn't involve Richter, he is the linchpin of the Belmont clan. One of the strongest members of the family by far, but also the one who was corrupted and possibly necessitated their disappearance for hundreds of years, forcing others to take up the mantle and keep Dracula at bay. How much of this makes it into the new Castlevania show is hard to say, but elements of it are sure to appear. It'll be remixed and taken in new directions, but the pieces here will undoubtedly shape how Castlevania Nocturne plays out. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming, or simply subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Every bit helps, and we couldn't be more appreciative. Thank you for watching, and be on the lookout for more fun videos in the future. Until next time, bye!